So good morning, everyone. It's Mark Lawton from RISC IT Solutions here. Welcome to Wales Tech Week, and welcome to our session around unifying communications with Microsoft Teams. You get two for the price of one today. So I'm joined by Mike Korkidakis from Wavenet, who'll be running the second half of the session. So I'll do a little bit of an intro around Teams itself, and then Mike's going to dive into more detail around the Wavenet offering and how you can light up Teams with unified communications. So a little bit about us just before we kick off into the main session. So RISC IT Solutions, based in North Wales, in sunny Llandudno. So we are a Microsoft Gold partner. Have been around for just about 20 years now. It's our 20th anniversary this year. So we've got a focus around cloud services and Microsoft cloud services in particular. We look after about 25,000 end users through around 250 IT partners that we work with, and that represents about 1,000 customers across the UK. A good set of customers in Wales, which is great, but we operate UK-wide primarily with some overseas customers as well. Big focus around Microsoft Cloud and Office 365, and obviously Teams as part of that, which is where we're going to focus our attention today. We partner with a number of key organisations as well, one of which is Wavenet, who I've mentioned. So they provide us with the calling capability, the contact centre capability, and call recording that we bolt onto Teams, which Mike will be covering in the second half of the session. A number of other partners, Redstore, we've partnered with for a long time, so they provide the backup and disaster recovery services that we work with customers, particularly where as more customers move information into Teams, then the ability to back that up and recover it if something goes wrong becomes more and more important. But the focus for today will be unifying communications. Okay, so I'm sure all of you are using Teams in anger and have used Teams and have seen Teams around. I mean, this is actually going back to before the lockdown. So this was February time, which is the last time I was in London, funnily enough. So even then, it struck me just how much effort and publicity Microsoft were putting behind the Teams product. So this was a photo I took at Euston Station when I was coming back from a Microsoft event, and I thought then there's no escape from this Teams thing. So obviously it wasn't quite as embedded as it is now for various reasons. Also, they were putting a lot of adverts on TV around March time, Six Nations, and also on Sky TV, they were running these 30-second adverts around Teams. So Microsoft were clearly pushing the product really, really hard, and there's lots of reasons why they're doing that, and I'll cover some of them in my intro. But in terms of where we are now, clearly, just in the middle of March, we were in a very, very different place as the lockdown kicked in, particularly obviously in China and the rest of Asia initially, where Microsoft saw something like a 500% increase in the usage of Teams over a couple of weeks. And obviously, as the lockdown then started to come into Europe and the UK, lots of people seeing Teams as the product that would help customers work remotely and work from home. Around sort of April time, then Microsoft saw a 70% increase in Teams usage across the globe, up to about 75 million daily active users. So, a huge push, as most of you and most of our customers already had Office 365. It made a lot of sense for the customers to take advantage of Teams to allow people the flexibility to work from home but still stay in communication. So we've seen a huge uptake in our customers. We've spent a lot of time training end users across our customer base and outside our customer base as well, to help them to make the most of the tools that are there. And as we see, people are asking questions now, well, touch wood, once this current lockdown is over, will companies move back to working how they were before? Probably not, is the honest answer to that. I think a lot of people enjoy the flexibility of working from home, if not all the time, but just having that option to work remotely. And recently Fujitsu announced that they were going to basically offer all of their information workers the option to have a home-based contract and not have to be based in an office, which is nothing new. I mean, I worked for BT, and 25 years ago, BT did the same kind of thing. So it's not new, but certainly with things like Teams and the ability for people to work from home, then it's become more and more important recently. And also in terms of Teams adoption, Nationwide recently announced that they were embedding Teams as part of their digital hub internally and using that as the platform that all of their employees will use. So yeah, huge amount of publicity, huge amount of usage around Teams that we're seeing ourselves and in the wider market. So a question we get asked a lot from our customers is why Teams? Why have we got another application to use? Surely it's just somewhere else for us to go to work and get work done. Well, that might be true. Certainly, if Microsoft have their way, at some point in the future, Teams will be the only place or the main place that you go to get work done. So already, some of the existing Office 365 products and services like SharePoint, like Skype for Business, Outlook Calendar, all of that functionality is already built into Teams. Obviously, Teams has its own calendar, which is the same one that you see in Outlook. Email is not there yet, but it will be coming at some point on the roadmap. Their enterprise social network product Yammer, that's built into Teams as well now, and the ability to work on documents and co-author documents with people within your organization and outside, again, that's all built into Teams. So Microsoft see Teams as the future in terms of places where you go to communicate and work together. So obviously all of the investment they put in, all of the development they're putting into Teams is bringing all of these products and services together into one place. So the other question we get asked a lot is, well, we use Zoom, we use WebEx, why would we want to use Teams as well? And again, I think the answer is, Teams is more than just a meeting platform, more than just a video conference platform. It's that plus it's a collaboration tool. So as well as the ability to work on documents together and share information with your team using Teams, then you've got this ability to chat, you've got this ability to run video meetings in a similar way to Zoom. And there are some difference in features. Zoom has a lead on some of the actual video functionality, but if you want a tool that effectively you've already got as part of Office 365, it's a single sign-on, it uses the same security and the same sign-on that you use for your other Office 365 apps, then Teams is that differential. And at the moment, obviously it's showing there we've got a 3x3 video stream which has been introduced recently. Microsoft have announced that they're going to upgrade that to 7x7, so that will leapfrog what Zoom currently gives you, so you'll have up to 49 simultaneous video feeds. So you can see that Microsoft are trying to fend off and tackle the competitors like Zoom and WebEx while maintaining the Teams as this collaboration platform. So for us, as well as Teams, and what we're going to focus on today is around, okay, we've got Teams, we're using Teams to communicate internally, that's great. How do we make that, how do we enhance it, and how do we make that our single unified communications platform? So Teams does offer a number of things. So it offers this one-to-one and persistent chat. They call it persistent chat because it's always there and always saved. So you can go back to a chat conversation you had, well, from day one, really. So you can go back a year, 2 years, however long you've been using Teams for, and search on that chat. Obviously, powerful online meetings. So this meeting that we're doing today is based on Teams. So all of the functionality that you had before in Skype for Business is built into Teams and enhanced. The bit we're really going to focus on today is around enterprise calling and voice. So for most of you that are currently using Teams, you probably won't have this. We've got more and more of our customers starting to embed telephony, so to enable Teams to receive and make calls, effectively replace their existing telephone system. We're seeing more and more customers that want a single place for people to work. So that's what Mike's going to cover off in his bit primarily, is around the enterprise calling and voice and some of the other bits that you can add onto that, like call recording. And then Teams, as I say, it is a platform. So talking about Zoom and WebEx as third-party applications, you can actually bolt those into Teams, and so you don't actually have to leave the Teams app to fire up a Zoom call, to fire up a WebEx call. Those apps are built into Teams as more and more organizations want their application to sit as part of the Teams ecosystem. And again, it's covered by the same enterprise-grade security and compliance that the rest of the Office 365 suite is. And as I say, what you see when you start to light Teams up with enterprise voice is you you start to get things like the dial pad here and your direct dial number. So you'll start to see the ability to make and receive calls directly onto your Teams app, whether that Teams app is sitting on the desktop, on your laptop, on your iPhone, on your iPad. It's the same identity. Okay, so that's enough of me talking for a little while. I'm just going to hand over to Mike Korkodakis now from WaveNet. Mike?
Perfect. Thanks, Mark. Appreciate that. I'm just going to start by sharing. Yeah, perfect. And I shall share mine now. Perfect. That should have come through now.
See you, but not your slides.
Okay. Bear with me.
Yeah, that's looking better. Got it.
Perfect.
Thanks, Mike.
Yeah, no worries. Thanks for that, Mark. Appreciate that. Yeah, so as Mark mentioned, it's sort of 2 for the price of 1 today. So thanks for joining, everyone. So my name's Mike Korkodakis, and I'm the channel manager here at WaveNet. So my role within WaveNet is working with sort of our key partners to help them deliver the enterprise telephony functionality within Microsoft Teams. So been working with RISC on doing that for quite some time. So my personal background is I've been in the sort of the UC UCAS space for about 15 plus years, and that spans 3 countries between Canada, Australia, and the UK. So plenty of experience in all the various different sort of UC and UCAS product sets. But the more recent years has been that focus on the Microsoft telephony space and the Microsoft communication tool space, everywhere from Communicator to Link to Skype for Business to where we are with Teams today. So what I want to cover off today is just, essentially focusing on, like Mark said, some of the telephony elements of Teams and the portfolio that we bring to that. I do just want to cover off a few sort of things in terms of sort of, the landscape that we're seeing today, and just sort of further highlight some of the benefits of why people are deploying Teams. As a starting point, like Mark did, just a little bit about us. Similar to RISC, we've been in, our specialty area of the industry for 20 plus years as well. Our finite focus has kind of started inherently from sort of networking and connectivity, unified comms and voice, and the other elements have come with sort of our partnerships with sort of key IT MSPs like RISC. So our specialty background is very much in that telephony space. WaveNet actually acquisitioned a company back in January of this year, which is where I came from. That organization was called Via. And what Via did is purely developed alongside Microsoft's key APIs in the sort of Skype for Business and then the Microsoft Teams space. So all Via's specialty was all about sort of the portal that we offer that's now been brought to WaveNet, and just a singular focus on that telephony space. So I'll touch on sort of the product and its benefits in a moment. So the product that we want to talk about today is TeamsLink. So as a starting place, one of the biggest questions we get asked is, is this like a plug into Teams? Is this something different? To answer that in short, it's very simple. We're a direct routing supplier. I'll walk through sort of our portal and our benefits in time. But for anybody that's on the call, you're using your standard Office 365 tenancy, that we're not making any changes to that. Users sign into that as normal. You're using your Teams client as normal. We'll bring a call tab to the Teams client. Mark sort of demonstrated that earlier. So there's no changes there. We're not plugging something additional in. We're just a direct routing supplier. So nothing to worry about there. TeamsLink is sort of what we've branded our element of the product. And again, just to give people that sort of peace of mind, it is a Microsoft approved solution. We do, of course, use Microsoft certified hardware. I'm going to touch on the elements of sort of the pricing in a moment, and some of the other benefits in just a moment. But this essentially what we're talking about is Teams telephony today. So as mentioned, I just wanted to highlight a few sort of quick slides on other elements, including things like the landscape of the modern workforce. And this just kind of highlights sort of the benefits of why people are deploying products like Microsoft Teams. So this is what we're seeing in the modern workforce today. Collaboration obviously is huge. 80% of employee time is now spent collaborating. social, there's 4 times as many devices per user. So for anybody on the call that's thinking of deploying Teams across multiple devices, for anybody that doesn't know, you can actually have 8 instances per user of the Teams application running simultaneously. So that can be across a PC, a tablet, a physical desk phone, a mobile device. So it kind of ticks that box. Flexibility. I mean, this was a Microsoft statistic previously that 72% of workers will be remote working by 2020. I think obviously, COVID wasn't factored into that, and we are where we are today. So, that number's obviously dramatically increased from that point. And of course, multi-generational. You are seeing 5 generations together in today's modern workforce, and that presents challenges in itself. So just further detail in some of those things and some of the challenges in supporting the modern workforce today. Of course, there's the advances in technology and a shift in workforce demographics are creating a more fluid work environment, and this redefines what productivity looks like, and of course, how to manage it. So new talent. This is quite a unique statistic, actually. A lot of new talent value things like experience, continued learning, flexibility is a huge one, and collaboration over purely just financial compensation. So how do you keep a widespread team informed and engaged? Obviously, everybody, employees and customers want information faster. How do you centrally manage the information whilst allowing people to access it from anywhere? How do you monitor KPIs and performance internally? How do you satisfy the demand for instant customer service? And of course, doing things like knowing when to embrace change. Those things are key challenges that we're experiencing today. So some of the features and benefits of the product that we offer, I just want to sort of highlight a few of those before I kind of dive into a little bit of a live demo on the actual portal and just highlight some of the key sort of benefits to products like this. One of the first and the initial ones is presence. So, in the industry, we call Teams, not only, like Mark said, is it just a platform, but it's a complete collaboration tool that's used for all various different elements. So a presence-based product makes communication more efficient by showing who's willing and available to communicate. The nice thing about a presence-based product is previously in the workforce, before things like presence-based products, you would simply blindly email or call somebody. That's not always the most productive form of communication. With simple presence-based product, and obviously this has Outlook calendar integration, which means that, if you're set for a meeting, it can automatically change your status, but it just lets your colleagues and your co-workers know your availability. And of course, not just that, but how best to communicate with you. If people can see you're in a meeting, then obviously calling you is not the most, the best way to collaborate and communicate with you. So products like this and presence-based products have huge benefits to increasing productivity, tracking communication, and of course, enhancing that collaboration. We're also seeing, of course, like Mark had this slide as well. It's just all-in-one communication. It is a platform. You have all these elements of calling, chat, meetings in a single app. Audio conferencing is not to be overlooked as well. That's very much built in to the Teams application. There's probably a lot of people on the call that are sitting Teams meetings now. You do have the functionality to add the audio conferencing element to that. So if people can't join by Teams and you want them to join by phone, and we're constantly seeing those improvements and those enhancements to the team space on the conferencing facilities. It is that platform that enables that conferencing to compete with the likes of Cisco WebEx or Zoom. But what's neat about Teams being a platform is you can actually choose to join those meetings from your Teams environment. Like I have a Cisco WebEx plugin into my Teams environment. So if I'm communicating with a client that has to host meetings in that way, I still am just using my single source platform of Teams to join those meetings. We of course are seeing things, financial benefits to deploying, UCaaS-based products, and that is things like limited to no upfront expenses. You do typically see a reduction in operating costs. It is a smarter use of staff resources. Of course, very scalable. Everything's like a per user basis, and of course with that, things like enhanced security. This is, these stats are quite interesting because they're quite key, and these are some of the things that you're seeing from employees and that sort of work-life balance when you're able to support employees working remotely in the same sort of capacity they would in an office. We're seeing these sorts of benefits, and again, these are sort of Microsoft stats that they've gone out and looked to acquire. So you're seeing things like remote workers are typically less stressed. Remote workers are well connected using products like Teams. It's no different if you're in an office or at home. You're just as well connected. Remote workers cost less. You do see sickness reduce. A new agile workplace opens up jobs in a wider talent pool. That's quite a key one. You can expand your geography. You don't have to look within a few mile radius of your office. Remote working provides choice. Companies benefit from happier employees. Remote workers are more engaged. Some remote facilities are better than an office, and commuters have lower levels of happiness. And I think most people that have to sit on a train for a few hours can vouch for that. Now, of course, some of these stats, what you look for is something, quantifiable. What does that actually look like in terms of results? So they do say that 4 hours a week are saved through workers with having improved collaboration and information sharing. 150 trips by year 3 are typically reduced and replaced by online meetings. 45 minutes per week are saved by first-line workers collaborating with colleagues. Very finite stats here: 17.7% improvement of time for a decision maker to make a decision. 88% of surveyed respondents felt having all of their solutions in one place saves time, and 18.9% of a reduction in meeting each week. I think we've all been part of some of those meetings that could have been an email, and obviously having the collaboration of Teams and the channel elements of Teams can help very much reduce those meetings.
I think the easiest one to get your head around on that one, Mike, is the travel, isn't it? I think that's obviously the key. I mean, we've all been forced into a situation where we don't want to or can't travel anyway, so we've kind of naturally got that. But thinking back to the amount of time you spent, as you say, on the train or driving to meetings that could have been done an hour's webinar.
Absolutely, and it just makes a more effective use of time. I mean, Mark and myself are both, speaking for you, Mark, but we both seem to be quite morning people because we have a lot of conversations at sort of 6 a.m. And for me, that's when I'm most productive. So I get the most amount of work done sort of first thing in the morning when I have no other distractions and not sitting on trains and commuting anywhere. So
definitely.
So yeah, what I want to move into now is actually starting to talk about the TeamsLink product and how it works. So sharing this next slide, this is quite an important slide, and I want to just sort of detail and go through certain elements of this slide to highlight the solution and how it works and sort of how we differ. Of course, like I already said, you're deploying Microsoft Teams through the Microsoft Teams environment, through your existing tenancy. All we're doing is taking control of the call traffic elements and providing a few sort of enhancements, in particular some enterprise level functionality. So this just highlights some of the differences of deploying our product versus just using the Microsoft Direct small business voice or their PSTN breakout product. This just highlights some of the differences. Won't labour some of the points too much, but things like the way we tariff, as an example, it's unlimited domestic minutes versus 1200 with Microsoft standard calling plan. We of course support any number porting, so you can port all your numbers into the environment. We provide of course new DDIs anywhere in the UK. The next tab is a massive key one, and this is a big difference for sort of our product versus the Microsoft Direct product. Microsoft are, of course, very much focused on developing Teams as an actual product. They're very honest in the fact that they don't focus on, the telephony element. They do heavily rely on the partner community to deliver that. So obviously that's where we can add this massive advantage. So we do have the ability to provide international DDIs in 127 countries. And with that comes breakout points. So we do actually have data breakout points in the likes of America, in Singapore, in Australia, within Europe. and that's to prevent things like latency. So we support organizations all over the world. So if we have obviously a user in Australia, we can provide them a local DDI, but more importantly, it means that their calls are not being routed back to the UK, breaking out from the UK and into Australia. Because we have those different data breakout points, it does mean that we can provide the most relevant geographical location to push your call traffic out over, to prevent things like latency, so there's no delays in your calls. Both products offer things like ring groups and follow this on routing. It's the standard features: auto attendance, music on hold, standard things, call queuing abilities. We do have a visual routing manager, and I'm going to touch on that in the portal shortly. Advanced disaster recovery. For us, this is another major one. So for anybody that's sort of familiar with the Microsoft landscape and how that works, so Microsoft, as an example, in the UK, rely on one, very, very strong sort of tier one provider for their telephony elements. But as we've all seen, and it has been demonstrated, even tier one providers do at times have outages. The way we've built our environment, and this is one of our unique differences, is we actually operate a true multi-tenanted infrastructure across multiple aggregated SIP channels. And what that means, in layman's terms, is essentially that within the UK, as an example, we partner with multiple tier one carriers. If a major tier one carrier goes out, it means that our infrastructure is not impacted because we can choose where and how we want to route our call traffic. So it means that we can push our call traffic through a different provider. And that doesn't just loop into the advanced disaster recovery element, that ties back into the international DDI element. It also means that we have the ability to deliver what we call low-cost routing. So deploying with Microsoft, as an example, there's a very, very set and finite rate card for making international calls, right? And that's a set rate card from Microsoft. And the way you obviously have to manage that by purchasing your call credits, etc. There's one set rate card for anywhere in the world. If you're an organization that does need to call other destinations, those rate cards can become a little bit uncompetitive. For us, it means that because we partner with all these different carriers, we can essentially deliver the traffic over the lowest cost routing avenue that suits your organization. So it means we can get very bespoke on your international dial and how that works. We do also, somebody have a question?
No, I was just going to say, Mike, while you've got that slide up,
Yep.
while it was on the front of my mind, as Mike said in his intro, Teams itself doesn't change. So, the Teams product is, as it is from Microsoft, but obviously you have, options if you want to provide direct dialing voice in or out. Microsoft do have their own bolt-on, which has its limitations, and obviously TeamsLink is an alternative to that. So just while it was on the front of my mind, Mike.
Yeah, perfect. No problem, Mark. We do offer skill-based routing, which I'll touch on in a moment. Group voicemail, which is really a nice feature. That's something that's not available in the Microsoft environment. If you have things like an accounts team or a sales team, as an example, it just means that you can terminate the voicemails to an entire group rather than a specific individual. A nice feature to have. Of course, as a partner as well, it means that we can provide MiFID II and FCA compliant call recording, and that's a huge key to our product. So for anybody that's in those sort of sectors that have to, comply with certain, FCA regulations or MiFID II compliant regulations, we do offer that within Microsoft Teams. And just touching on that as well, I did mention previously that we develop alongside Microsoft's APIs that they release, things for like policy APIs or calling APIs. What this means for us as well is that we're not only capturing at the moment external calls, we're also capturing the internal traffic as well. And as Microsoft continue to make updates to those policy APIs, it means we'll capture the instant messaging traffic, your document share traffic as well. There are a few other direct routing suppliers out there that are advertising call recording, and some of them are only capturing that PSTN activity. So anything that's breaking out of the Microsoft Teams environment, where our solution is capturing the internal Teams traffic as well. And I'll just touch on this as well when I move over to a demo, is we do have some just things like, basic wallboards and dashboards, some very basic sort of contact center features. Just moving on quickly, I do like to just sort of touch on this, and this just sort of highlights some of the differences and some of the different ways you can work with different devices within Microsoft Teams. So for any of those organizations that do want to use things like physical handsets, there are various different ranges of physical handsets that do exist in the Microsoft Teams space. So you can have those. You have all various different types of headsets that work for different organizations. And then you do have things like the room solutions. So, like I mentioned, the nice thing about Teams in that platform environment is, you can use it as that true conference facility. You can have rooms set up to host Teams meetings, invite rooms into meetings. You have those capabilities. And, you have, if I look at the next slide as well, you have full-on meeting room devices that can fully integrate and fully comply with how Teams works and everything. So it does work really, really nicely there, as well as obviously having individual devices for all various different users and how they work. So yeah, there's all various different types of devices that you can look at. Just what I want to do quickly is going back to that slide of some of the differences as well, is I just want to sort of pull across the TeamsLink portal and maybe just demonstrate some of those in real time and just discuss sort of how they look and how the portal actually works. So firstly, as Mark kind of interjected and said as well, going back to sort of Teams, your end users are just using the Teams client as they're using currently. A calls tab will come into the Teams client that enables them to make outbound calls. You'll have the functionality of being able to, a few sort of call forwarding and simultaneous ring elements through your Teams client, enabling you to sort of demonstrate how you want to route your individual traffic. But this back-end portal that you're seeing now, this is kind of for the people that administer the solution. So whether you kind of go through a partner like RISC IT and they do this for you, whether you want some of the control elements to administer the solution yourself, this is the back-end portal that anybody that needs to administer the solution will see. So your typical end users don't actually see this. What you will see on the home screen here is just a very basic sort of call charges tab and some of the activity tab as well. The call charges tab, this will just highlight sort of, as I mentioned, domestic calls are inclusive. So this will just highlight a rolling tally of live charges for things like international calls or premium rate numbers. That will highlight all of this. You can view the operational health of the system on this tab as well on the home screen. And as I mentioned, there's obviously a global presence. So you can obviously take a look at the operational health of all various different the locations and if there's any sort of incidences and how they're being looked at. And of course, subscribe to the updates of how the platform actually works. So just want to run through a few of the sort of the key elements and some of the differences. I don't want to touch on every single bit of the portal, but I just want to highlight some of the main differences of the product to Microsoft Direct and some of the advantages that you get with it. The first one, oddly enough, is just actually the activity tab. So for anybody that's accessing some of this information through the Teams admin portal, some of this can be quite complex to actually get out of the portal, as well as some of it can sometimes require some PowerShell scripting to run. But we have just a very basic endless scroll. You can circulate certain date ranges, and this just highlights any of the activity that's taken place in the organization. And this is important for various reasons. So a lot of organizations like looking at this for typically HR purposes or GDPR compliance purposes. But I did mention that we develop alongside Microsoft's policy APIs. The next release of Microsoft's policy API will allow us, like we can in the Scott for Business world, to not only capture call traffic, but you'll also see here video traffic, you'll see instant messages, and as importantly, you'll see document transfers. So you'll be able to very quickly see if any documents are leaving the organization that perhaps shouldn't if they weren't secured or locked down. So it just gives you a very quick endless scroll, date range, time, etc., just so you can have a really quick snapshot of what's taken place in the organization. Now, you can extract a lot of this stuff from the reporting as well, but this is just a very, very quick sort of snapshot, and that's how it's designed. And you can also do the same for conferences. And anything that we have can be released to a data query as well. So we develop our own sort of APIs that can release into products like Microsoft's Power BI product, as an example, which enables very bespoke reporting and very detailed analytics. So we do have a live API link, which allows you to plug in to those sorts of products so you can get very, very granular, and we feed you all that live data. So in the setup tab, this is where you're going to see a lot of the elements and sort of, some of the enterprise features and functionality that you would need to see for deploying Microsoft Teams as a phone system. And there's a few things in here that I'll touch on So in the security tabs, as an example, you can set things like block collars. You can set a dial policy for the organization. So if you want to block certain destinations from being called, you can block that from the setup tab and the dial policy tab. You can set up, your user groups and your security groups. So you might have, specific team managers that you want to be able to run certain reports on certain teams, but you don't want them to be able to change call routes or view other data in the portal. You can restrict all the various different levels for certain individuals. You can manage any of your media, so any of your auto attendants, your IVRs, your voicemails, all that can be uploaded in the portal by an MP3 or a WAV. You can upload all of that in here. You can name them, and you have control over all of that. And you can manage all your media. You can do things like change the outbound CLI. So when I route back to calling a product like this, a presence-based product, you do move away from that traditional needing an extension number for every particular user. With products like this, every user has a DDI and every user is assigned a DDI. What we do find is some organizations, however, don't want every user presenting their individual DDI. You might potentially want to present a main office number. So we do have the ability to change the outbound CLI that's presented so you can mask that. I myself do lots of work within Australia as well as the UK. So when I'm making my outbound calls for Australia, I can present a local Australian number. And again, that ties back into the fact that we provide local DDIs. We have certain organizations where certain users call all various different countries. So through their contact center agent dashboard, they can quickly switch which CLI they want to present when they're making those outbound calls. So it's very easy for them to do that. So you can manage all that very simply through the portal. You can manage your voicemails. So you can set up things like your group voicemails, like I mentioned, group voicemail as well, being a sort of a key and different feature for the product. So you can manage all that from the portal. You can, of course, also just simply create new users. And this is a really, really nice and quick feature. So there's two ways that you can create users in the portal. So we do actually have what's called an Active Directory sync tool. So if you do create a new user in your Office 365 tenancy, and we actually use that tool, it does mean that when you create a new user in your Office 365 tenancy, that does pull across to the portal and it does populate this information. You simply, select on the drop-down menu and choose the user, assign them the domain and assign them the license, or you can simply just manually create a user, which is very easy to do. You select the domain you want them assigned to, so you can manage multiple domains in the portal as well. You select a license for that user, and then this will pull up the range of available phone numbers. You simply select that number. You can fill in any other detail you want. You can add them if they're going to be part of the contact center, and you can just go to create a user. So it means that you can have a user ready to use Teams telephony very, very quickly, as well as if you are doing bulk amounts of users, you can set it to sync with your Active Directory, which pulls all the information across, which populates all these tabs for you, which is a really, really nice feature. So it just demonstrates how easy it is to create and spin up a new user. So one of the big things that I wanted to focus on as well is I did mention that we have a visual call routing manager. So what that means, and this is a key differentiator as well. So anybody that's used this within the Microsoft environment, they'll understand that it's still, we'll stick. It's manageable and people can understand it. It's just a little bit more complex to use. With our product, it's just a visual call routing manager. Even people that aren't overly technical can get a feel for sort of how this works. If somebody calls this number, it hits what's called a time condition. So if it's within these hours, in this instance, Monday to Friday, 7 till 6, it hits a main menu, which has an IVR to it. So, that'll be press 1 for sales, press 2 for support. And you can see support hits another IVR, press 1 for standard support, press 2 for provisioning, and so on. You can see where your calls route for public holidays or out of hours. It's just very, very simple and very, very easy and quite simplistic to manage. What other customers like as well is this does tick a nice box for a little bit of sort of disaster recovery as well. So what you can do is you can template various different instances or various different solutions. You can have templates set for certain public holidays or maybe certain days that you're closed. You can set templates for disaster recovery. If an office needs to be evacuated, any sort of instances like that, you can set all those templates in the portal. All you need is internet access. It is mobile friendly as well, and you can just go in and activate those templates, and it's an immediate change, routing all your call traffic to where you have and how you've set the templates to flow. So it's very easy to do that, and it is as simple as I go into the setup tab and just click on create a call route. First thing I'll get is this will pull the range of DDIs that are within the organization. And it is just a click-through process. I can name that call route whatever I want. I can choose the time zone for it, and it's just a click-through process. You might want to start with something like a time condition. A time condition is just, setting the hours. In here is where you can actually set new criteria, or you can set public holidays. All those things can be set automatically, and you can just choose to sort of route those. You can just add things like your IVRs and your media, an announcement as an example. Thanks for calling. And you can see that you can select all your various different elements from the audio files there and just add that to a call route. Now, two of the things that were highlighted on that previous tab that both exist in the Microsoft environment and our environment is ring groups and call queues. I just want to touch on one of the elements of a call queue and discuss a certain difference in our product as well. So a ring group, which both products offer, is very, very simplistic. A ring group is as simple as what it sounds like. Somebody calls this number, you can set the ring time, you can have all various different labels of ring groups. If I set this as potentially sales as an example, it means that it's going to ring everybody that I have set in this ring group for 20 seconds until somebody picks up. If nobody picks up, it'll just continue to ring them on various increments, or I could then terminate this to a voicemail as an example. What we also have is a call queue. The Microsoft environment has a call queue where you can select the order in which the calls are going to ring. But what we do have built into our environment in our TeamsLink Pro product is what's called skill-based routing. So it does it by default through smart agent selection. So if I chose sales as an example now, it does mean that I can rank my agents from 0 to 100. Obviously, the higher the skill ranking of the agent, they take those calls first and then sequentially downwards. If you have a whole bunch of agents on the same skill level, through smart agent selection, it rings the person that's been most idle the longest. So this is a key advantage to our product, and this is a big benefit that a lot of organizations see. I mean, we ourselves use it. RISC IT use it. So a lot of organizations that have an element of like a service desk, as an example, skill-based routing is an absolute necessity for them. So it just saves a lot of time and makes things very easy. So we do have that built into the product, which is nice. And you can obviously have, a ring group that moves into a call queue, and you can stack those how you want them. That's a nice advantage to the product. A few other elements, just touching on them quickly, is of course there are some bespoke reports built into the product. So you can run certain reports on things like, call summaries or missed calls or outbound call detail records, some basic reporting that you expect. I did mention, obviously, that a huge key to our product is providing you that live data. So if you do have things like, the Power BI expertise, we can feed you that data live. And through Power BI, you can get very, very granular in providing specific analytics. We are ourselves releasing some sort of standard Power BI templates towards the end of the year, which also will be part of the product built in for those customers that want things that are a little bit more bespoke. But all the data's there, and you can do whatever you want with it. Just want to move on to one last element of the actual portal, and that's touching on the actual contact center piece. So there's a few different things you can do in the contact center. So what you can see is we do actually have what's called like a supervisor dashboard as an example. Very, very basic, but you can see that obviously through the contact center dashboard, you can get a view of your agents. You can manage specific call queues. When calls route in, you can see those calls coming in live. You can have a little bit of control over your agents to take them out of a call queue. I can set them to busy. I can start a break for them. I can log them out. I can change some of the settings I want on a per agent basis, extended wrap up, set wrap up times, and those sorts of elements through some of the dashboard settings. And of course, obviously, just manage all the various different queues and see the traffic that's coming in. So for organizations, especially in the situation we're in now, if you were sitting at home, you could monitor a lot of the agent activity and what the call flows look like, as well as having elements like live and active wallboards that can go up. So these are just kind of bespoke elements of the product that we're constantly developing and constantly working on, that you can actually see, and you can use those as big advantages to sort of how you monitor and manage the product. In the contact center tab as well, you're going to see a few other elements here. So you'll see obviously some more detailed levels of reporting. So things like queue summary and agent summaries. In queue summaries, that's when it pulls up a lot of the stats you see on a wallboard. So you can run, what was the average answer time on a queue, how many calls came into a queue. You can see all those levels of detail in the report. You'll also see things like CRM integration and call recording. So CRM integration, so we can integrate the product with most of the major CRMs that are out there, your Salesforce, your Dynamics, your Zohos, your HubSpots, all various different CRMs that exist. What CRM integration means in the base product, however, is basically essentially two elements. It means that through the CRM, you can do what's called click to dial. So you can simply just click, that'll open up your Teams client and you can make an outbound call. And it will also do content record pulling, which means that any detail that's stored in your CRM, if someone makes an inbound call, it'll pop that record in the bottom right-hand corner when the call comes in of who that call is, the organization they're calling from, and the route in which they came in on. Now, sometimes we do get asked, can it do other things like scripting and those sorts of elements? Moving on to those sorts of products, that's not built into the base sort of TeamsLink product. We can touch on that stuff in, we do have more advanced contact center solutions that can do those sorts of things that integrate into Teams. But what we're positioning here is a product that on a commercial standpoint is like for like with Microsoft's product. And these are just some of the benefits that come with this product out of the box without moving into sort of more detailed contact center elements. And of course, call recording. I did mention that call recording exists in the platform. And what you can see here is essentially the call recording platform. And this is just, what you would expect out of a call recording platform. You can search specific intervals on date ranges. You can search by phone number from or to various parties. You can search by specific users. You have advanced search options. We do even have things like metadata and markers, which means that, these calls can actually be transcribed. There's a transcription offering as well, which means you can then search by text. There's all various different elements you can do out of the call recording platform. It gives you a whole range of whatever your search criteria populates. You can of course play those. You can do things like copy the URL. So if you need to export elements out of the call recording and send that to a solicitor, a particular team manager, or anything like that, you can actually export that data and do that. So you have those capabilities right out of the portal as well as setting things like a longer legal hold. So there's two retention offerings that we offer in the call recording platform. For anything that's FCA or MiFID II compliant, that has to come with a standard retention period of 7 years. But we do also offer for organizations that might just want call recording as a feature, but don't need to pay for that, extended period of retention period. Our base product for call recording gives you all the same feature set, but it just stores the recordings for 90 days rather than having a 7-year retention period. So you do have that built into the product as well. And that sort of wraps up some of the key features in the telephony side. And yeah, that's kind of back over to you, Mark. I think that unless there's any questions.
We've got any questions in the chat, guys?
No, we've got no questions in the chat, no.
Okay, thanks, Kirsty. We'll continue on then, if that's okay. Just bear with me a second. Thanks, Mike. Let me just pull my slides up again. Hopefully you've got those up now.
Yep, all good.
Yeah, thanks for that, Mike. I think thinking back to when I first worked with Via, who are obviously the company that WaveNet bought, you had a tagline that was called "A great product made better," or something like that. Yeah. It might have been a great product made greater, but that probably isn't right. But yeah, and I think that was at the time was true, and I think it's true now. I think Teams is a great product, and I think what we're doing with WaveNet is enhancing it and bringing some of those features that aren't core within the product. Even if you take the Microsoft calling plans, you know, a lot of the stuff that Mike talked about there, particularly the contact center capability, the call recording capability, just the simplicity of being able to set up those call queues and IVR type solutions is either unavailable or incredibly difficult to do out of the box with Microsoft. So you know, we're finding more and more customers. As Mike said, we use it ourselves internally, obviously, as you'd expect. We've got a case study that for a project we did recently for a customer where they managed to deploy it about a week before the lockdown came in. So that was great timing. So they use all of that functionality, contact center, ring groups, and you know, enables their users to work from home. And I think a lot of people ask me again questions around, you know, Teams and Microsoft Voice, and you know, is it mature? Well, you know, and does it work? Does it work? Well, yes, it does work. I think, is it mature? I'm showing my age here, but I remember working at BT in 2008 when Microsoft launched OCS, which was their first version, if you like, of proper telephony within their products, and then we thought, actually, this, you know, we need to wake up. Microsoft are starting to move into this voice market, and it's obviously evolved through OCS, through Link, through Skype for Business, and now here we are with Teams. So you know, in terms of the technology that sits in the background to drive that voice side of Teams, no, that's not new. What we've got is a better product to deliver that voice solution in Teams. So yeah, just in terms of sort of finishing off after Mike's section, I think clearly the big benefit of Teams, and Mike mentioned the fact you can have 8 simultaneous devices logged into Teams at any one time for a single user. I've not quite got to 8 yet, but I think I've probably got 5 here now logged in. So and the beauty of having your telephony bolted into Teams as well, it doesn't matter whether you're using a desktop with Windows, Mac, mobile device, whether that's iPad, iPhone, Android, you know, or you're logged in through a web browser if you're on a machine that's not your day-to-day machine. That call will ring. So if somebody calls you, they will all ring, regardless of where you're logged in. And obviously it depends on which device you decide to answer that call on. So the beauty is, whichever device you're using, it's the same ID, same identity, and the same functionality pretty much. So what we call Teams everywhere. And just, yeah, as Mike mentioned again, there's a whole series of devices as well. So as well as being able to run Teams on your main desktop, laptop device, then you've got iPhone, iPad, Android, but also these Teams specific devices like the Yealink handset, for example. So effectively these new generation of phones run an Android version of Teams that sits on the phone. So if you've got people that still want to maintain that traditional sort of handset device, likewise with the Teams rooms as well, that Mike talked about. So, you know, you can actually turn your meeting room into a complete video conferencing suite that runs Teams. So whichever device and whatever kind of size of room that you want to work, there's a device that will support that. And I think what we're benefiting from with Teams being a cloud delivered service, being part of Office 365 is that constant innovation. So obviously Microsoft seems to be updating the product on a weekly basis at the moment. Obviously some of those features take a little bit longer to come down the line. So that, you know, some of the key ones that have come down recently, so things like pop-out chat. So particularly if you're moving from Skype for Business into Teams, then some of the limitations of only having a single app are obvious. So Microsoft are slowly opening that up and allow you to have multiple chat windows, which is there now. You can't have multiple call windows yet, but again, that's coming. Live captions and subtitling, you can actually switch that on at your end if you want. So at the moment, that's only English, but there are plans to support multiple languages. So I could be presenting in English, but having it translated as a great example to Welsh as we go through. So that's on the roadmap as well. This 3x3 video feed we've got here, plus the custom backgrounds, as you see the guys here. Some of them have got blurred backgrounds, some of them have got customized backgrounds, as I've got today for Wales Tech Week. 7x7 will be coming in third quarter this year. So, I mean, that's only just been released before I guess sort of April time, it was 2x2, and that's gone to 3x3, and then it will go to 7x7. So they're constantly developing the product, constantly evolving it. And then you've obviously got third-party partners like WaveNet delivering things like MiFID compliant call recording. So if you're in financial services, that's a huge tick in the box for the service there. So some of the things Microsoft are bolting into the core product, some things they're leaving for partners like WaveNet to bring to their sort of innovation and expertise to enhance Teams. And if you just look at some of the functionality that's been delivered since we started running these sessions, so just, only back sort of 4 months ago to March, all the ones that have been crossed out are ones that have been delivered in that time. So, business voice itself, custom backgrounds, the video panes, the live captions, the multi-chat windows. There's some of those important ones that are still on the roadmap that have not been quite delivered yet. So things like offline support being a key one. So at the moment, if you're a Teams user, you'll know you can't compose a chat or post into a team offline. You need to be connected to Teams. That's going to change. So you'll be able to work offline and then sync up when you've got an internet connection. At the moment, you can see your calendar in Teams. So the calendar you see in Teams is the same one you have in Outlook, but there are some limitations at the moment. You can't see you can't see other people's calendars, and also you can't see your email within Teams yet. Again, that's something that's coming, and that's on the roadmap as well. So more and more functions, more and more features are being bolted into Teams as the product evolves. And there's a roadmap you can actually look at yourselves. So once Microsoft have a feature that they've committed to deliver, it'll appear on this roadmap here, and the URL is there, although that URL will be part of the slide pack that you'll get. But as you see there, a number of features that are in development, features that are currently rolling out, and features that have been launched recently. So that gives you an idea of what's coming down the line. They also have something called user voice as well. So if there's something that you think actually that would be a really useful feature and it's not on the roadmap, then you can actually vote on the user voice channel, where you see some of the features that are maybe further down the line that are not being committed to by Microsoft yet, but they do actually listen to that user voice feedback. And once they get enough interest in a feature, then they'll actually elevate that to being part of the roadmap. So you do have some input, small or large, into how the product's evolving. Just to sort of finish off a little bit about us and kind of why here and how we sort of take this forward. If you're interested in learning more about Teams and the Teams Unified Comms side in particular, so ourselves, we are both a Microsoft Gold partner and a WaveNet Platinum partner, so we can obviously pull together both sides of the solution. We've got some great reference customers. I mentioned the customer that we deployed recently is it's a charity, Alzheimer's Research UK. They're a reference customer for us. So they rolled out just over 200 users using full Teams and WaveNet contact center and call queuing. And so we finished that project about a week before the lockdown came in. So great timing from their point of view that they were able to let everybody work from home and answer calls in exactly the same way they were when they were in the office. We have, just let me skip forward to put there you go. We have what I call a Teams fast track engagement, which is where we will help you to get Teams up and running and rolled out across the organization in a condensed way. And then we're also, as part of this Wales Tech Week, we're offering a free 30-day proof of concept. So if you want to try business voice with ourselves and WaveNet TeamsLink, then we will set that up and let you run that for 30 days free of charge for up to 25 users. So again, if you're interested in that, Sean will share the sign up link for that as part of the pack that you'll send out to you. So as long as you've signed up for today's event with an email address, you'll get a copy of the slides and all the information in terms of follow-up from us as well. So I think that's probably enough from me for now. So appreciate all of your time and attention today. Hope you found the session useful.